It seems that there is a lot of interest around the fork, the knives, and all the right and wrong things to do or not to do at the table. So let's dive in. This is a first video of a series of videos on manners. So if you would like more on this topic, please tell me in the comments. So first of all, the table. It seems like the more elements, dishes, glasses, and cutlery there are on the table, the more your table sounds elegant and sophisticated. Now let me tell you this. I might disappoint you, but in French traditional high society elegance, yes, the dishes and silverware can be very refined, but there is a rule not many seem to be aware of. It's the principle of simplicity. You see, if you were to be invited today at a traditional high society meal in Paris or elsewhere in France, you would probably be surprised by the simplicity of the setting of the table. There wouldn't be a whole display of plates one on top of the other and many different forks and knives displayed on the table. My grandmother used to say, "We are not at a restaurant." You see, in French traditional elegance, you would generally have one plate, one fork and a knife, and probably two glasses, one for the water and another for the wine. And that's it. Of course, that all depends on what will be served, but this is in general. Some families have their own habits and specificities, of course, so you may find in front of the glasses a little knife and fork or spoon, depending on the dessert that you are going to be served. You see, in the olden days, there would probably have a staff to help for the service, and they would bring the dessert plates and cutlery when needed during the meal. But for practical reasons, now that there is no staff anymore today, when the table is set, we can put in advance the cutlery on the table so that you don't have to get up all the time for each course. But if you're having some guests and you want it to be a little more formal, then I personally don't put those knives and spoon or fork in front of the glasses. So I stack them on a separate table in the dining room and hand them out when the time comes for the cheese plates and the dessert plates. So I would just hand, like, for example, this. I would prepare one spoon, one fork, and hand it out individually to every person. So this allows the table not to be too crowded by so many things. If it's just a normal family meal, like if I'm going to my parents' home or cousin's home for an everyday meal, we just change plates once for the cheese and use the same plate for dessert. We would only change plates after the cheese to have a special clean plate. Only if we had some Roquefort, which is a very odorant cheese, and that would spoil our dessert, or if we had a very strong creamy cheese that spilled all over our plate, then we would change plates for dessert. But remember, in table manners, it's a lot about common sense. So of course, this is just a way of doing things that is typical in French, traditional high society French families. But what I want you to understand is that behind habits and manners is always meaning. You see, many people think that in high society, it's all about sophistication and displaying wealth. Well, in France, this isn't the mindset at all. Simplicity is key. Now, this doesn't mean that the table must be stark and dry. Not at all. You get to put some very beautiful refined dishes and silverware, beautiful flowers and candles. Beauty is so important because it nourishes the soul and elevates the energy and celebrates life. I didn't do this for this video right now, but I just put the dishes right here. But it's just that with an elegant mindset, we are not here to display and to impress, but to welcome hearts and souls at the table, which is very different. The deep meaning of a dinner party is to welcome and to connect with people's hearts, spirit, and soul. It is first for the spiritual, heart-centered, and intellectual connection. It isn't to show off or make people feel uneasy or inferior. So our job is to find the right balance between honoring our guests with enough beauty to uplift our hearts and mood, and not overwhelming our guests with a display of wealth which could feel a little bit too much. This is the reason why simplicity is a basic principle in elegance, and it stems from the heart. Of course, you have to adapt and nuance what I'm saying, because I know there are people from all over the world watching my content, and in the end, this is just to inspire you. You must always adapt to your own circumstances and do what makes you happy. That's the most important. What you must keep in mind is that your warmth and mindset are the most important ingredients when you welcome guests at your home. They must feel welcome, seen, heard, honored, and considered. That's the goal. So all of this doesn't seem very concrete maybe, but you must understand this mindset part, because all the so-called etiquette rules stem from these reflections. This is the reason why in France, for example, it isn't very appropriate to say bon appétit, even if you hear many people say this. Saying bon appétit, which is a way to say in English, enjoy your meal, is not an elegant habit at all. So people ask me, but what do we say instead? And why is this not correct? Well, let me explain. First, what do you say instead of bon appétit? Well, nothing. You just don't talk about your appetite. Why? Because, you see, as I mentioned previously, you're not invited to eat. The deep meaning of gathering people together is about heart and intellectual connection. I even push the reflection further. It's a way to honor the divine in one another. It's a way to acknowledge and have reverence for the human being you are inviting at your table and home. This is to share a moment of deepness, care, and joy of life with a capital L. The food is just secondary. You don't go to friends' home to eat. You go there to meet them and have a nice time with them. Food is a way to make this meeting more pleasurable, of course, but it doesn't come first. Let's take another classic example of table manners that I see everywhere, and that is put forth as part of good manners, which is in fact not quite appropriate. And it looks like this is a trend out there. Many people think that they should hold their stem glass at the stem, and that it is the elegant way to go about it. Specialists even put forth some kind of scientific reason for this way of doing. They justify this way of holding their glass by the fact that wine or champagne should not be worn by your fingers. But this isn't the traditional way of holding a glass wine with elegance. Even with this explanation, you just hold your glass at 1/3 at the base of the cup, and it's so much more practical and natural. If you were to go to a real high society dinner party, you will not see people holding their glass by the stem. You can even see that King Charles doesn't do that either. Holding the stem of the glass is a habit of wine tasters. And if you are invited to a social gathering, you are not asked to be the wine taster, but to enjoy the company of others while having a good meal. This is subtle, but do you see the difference? You are not there to prove your wine expertise, but to honor the presence of others while maybe having a nice wine to taste. First comes the joy of being together. Second comes the food and the wine. They are just a way to awaken all senses. So this is how you hold it correctly, just simply this way. So we don't go to a dinner party being very hungry and mentioning it. Again, we are not there to eat, but to cherish life with others. That's why food isn't going to be the center of the conversation unless it is to thank the host for their delicious cooking or for the beauty of the table setting, which warms bodies, souls, and hearts. But of course, talking about food in a way that you want to share or learn about regional specialties is absolutely fine. In France, cooking and food are a great part of our culture and a way of living. So having having conversation around food is totally fine, as long as it is about uplifting others and not saying how hungry you are and that you just came for food. You get the idea. So here is another habit we have here in France. Traditionally and generally, we do not serve plates already prepared for each person. We have a main dish from which everyone gets to serve themselves. This is a simple table etiquette that will save you energy and avoid food waste. It is best to let people serve themselves on their own at the table rather than imposing a certain amount of food on their plate by serving them. At a French family table, each person should be able to choose how much food they're going to put in their plate according to what they think they want to eat, right? Usually we're not supposed to leave food in our plate because it isn't appropriate to throw away food. And by imposing a given amount of food, even in a very nice way, it forces the person to eat maybe more than planned, or it may force them to finish a dish that they don't really appreciate. So to avoid all discomfort, the best way is to let the person decide the quantity. And here are other details about serving yourself from the main dish. You put the dish on your left side. You usually hold the serving spoon in your right hand, and if there is also a fork for serving, you put it in your left hand. You see, this isn't just the rule, it just makes sense. Most people are right-handed, so if you have the food in the big spoon, having the fork in the left hand will help you collect the items correctly to put them on your plate. And if you're left-handed, just do the opposite. And here is another detail that my grandmother repeated to us, her grandchildren, all the time. I heard this so many times that I knew this sentence by heart. She would say in French, "On ne met pas plus de 2 fois les couverts dans le même plat. On ne trempe pas plus de 2 fois les couverts dans le même plat," which translates into, you don't put cutlery in the same dish more than twice, which means that when you serve yourself from the main dish, you are not supposed to go back and forth too many times. 2 times is maximum. Why? Because elegance is about being discreet. You're not supposed to make others wait too long for their turn to get served, and you're not supposed to serve yourself big amounts of food, as you must be mindful of others and measure that you are leaving enough for others. Remember, in elegance, there's a principle that is very subtle, but that says that it isn't about you, but about honoring and making people feel valued. So discretion is part of this mindset, but I will come back to that in more detail in another video. If you want more of this, let me know in the comments if you like more videos on manners and etiquette. I love creating what truly supports you, and if this video helped you, sharing it makes just a big difference for me. So thank you for being here with me, and I'll see you in the next video.